The other thing is that I will interview anybody, but I really like women who we can see ourselves being them. We can see ourselves doing those jobs. We can hear ourselves making those mistakes and be like, oh, she did this. I can do it differently. And the tips that these women pass on are just one of my very first ones who said, stop apologizing in your emails. Stop saying you're sorry. Don't start your emails with, I'm so sorry. Say, I appreciate your patience. It was something I never would have thought of, but something that really has made a difference in my career. So,
welcome to Knowing Me, Knowing You, the podcast for the future of wealth management. Thanks for being here. I'm Marla Sofer. Money is a tool. It empowers people. Let's dive into how technology is personalizing advice, strengthening connections, and creating lasting impact. If you're an advisor looking to differentiate, a fintech leader shaping the next wave, or a client ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast, the Know Me podcast where we explore the art and science of discovery to build meaningful connections in financial planning. Well, being a great advisor isn't just about numbers, it's about listening. And at the same time, it's the same skill that we have in parenting. In both roles, success comes from understanding needs, guiding with patience, and empowering others to make confident decisions in their lives. Lorie Jones knows this firsthand. As the president of Fearless Financial Advisors, Lorie built a career around meaningful conversations, active listening, and guiding individuals, particularly women, toward financial success. She also took a really bold career break to focus on family, an experience that shaped her perspective on work, leadership, and what it means to truly support others. In this episode, we're going to dive into the surprising parallels between parenting and financial advising, why listening is the most underrated skill in both, and how taking a step back can sometimes be the best way to move forward. Plus, Lorie's going to share insights on launching a strong podcast and using storytelling to build trust and engagement, and how we can actually support more women to take the right actions so that they build a better financial relationship with themselves and achieve their aspirations. Lorie, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast.
Thank you so much, Marla, for having me. I just enjoy, I could talk about finance and helping women and empowering women like all day, every day. So I appreciate the chance for sharing that.
Amazing. We're thrilled that you're here. So you've had a great career so far. What excites you about the moment that we're in right now?
I think that I had a networking event that I was at just recently, and the woman stood up. It was a women's group, and she stood up and she said, this is the year of the woman. It is going they are going to take their place in finance, in business building, and they're going to show up authentically in all these places. And it gave me such a strong feeling of, oh yes, we are going to show up this year and going forward. So that is what excites me. I do think that specifically in financial services, there's a great wealth transfer going on. So there are women that are inheriting or just coming into their own as they move up the career ladder, taking charge of their financial future. And so that excites me.
Oh, I love that. It is. Let's amen to that. It is going to be the year of the woman. So you've spoken about the importance of being fearless, especially for young women who are aspiring to find their own personal impact. How does fearlessness shape your personal brand and approach to financial advice?
Oh, I like that question. So the idea is Fearless Females is my podcast and Fearless Financial Advisors is my company. And I would say fearless is not about going out and just trying anything. It's being scared. I'm scared to death half the time. When I started my podcast, I was terrified. I didn't know whether I would be any good at it. I'm an introvert naturally. I wasn't sure that the stories that I wanted to share would be meaningful for people. And I was just flat out terrified. But guess what? I did it anyway. So that's the idea of being fearless, is being scared, not exactly knowing what you're doing, but you're going to try it. because what's the worst that's going to happen? I've had so many guests on my podcast that are like, well, the worst that's going to happen is I fall flat on my face, then I learn something, then I get up and try it again. And I think that goes into finance too. With my clients, typically I'm working with a woman who is taking control and charge of her financial future. And she is sometimes, I say I work with women that want to take control of their financial future, but sometimes they don't have a choice. This is thrust upon them. They're divorced, they're widowed, their husband wants nothing at all to do with it. They are left with this kind of big job, and finance can be scary sometimes. And I think that helping them to carry this burden that they're now dealing with, and showing them that you just take that first step, you get your team, you get your tribe together, and you really truly can be fearless. And I also do a little play on the idea of fearless. For me, the idea is, in financial advising, in preparing your future, I want you not only to be fearless and try, but I want you to fear less. Have that security. Know that you have the tools that you need to be successful. And so what we can do as far as understanding your goals and kind of trying to give you that peace of mind that you're going to need in order to be successful in this endeavor.
What I hear a little bit is when you started in explaining how you approach fearlessness, you started really by saying, I want to encourage women to fear more. It's about being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway, and recognizing that when you're taking control, you have the power to be in control, and that fear is going to be there. And when you recognize the fear and you pull it under control, then you achieve the opportunity to fear less, because you're developing a sense of security in the fact that you've got it under control. Even though it was something that you were so fearful of, you can actually grow into fearing less. And so some of that evolution comes from your unique power of listening. And you talk a lot about the art of listening, and talking about fear is really hard. So how do you get somebody to talk about something that what we know people like to talk about least in the world is money. So how have you really cultivated your skill of active listening and active listening about something that is so fraught with fear to do the type of discovery work that helps you become a solution provider?
So I think that my approach is a little bit different. There's only 20% of us really that are females in this industry in financial advising. And I have typically I've come into rooms where they have the big conference table and they've got the big television screen, and they kind of sit down and they want to, like,
yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. And if they get unsure sometimes about what they're talking about, a lot of times they'll use a lot of big language and really big concepts so that you don't know that they don't know exactly where they're going with this. And my approach is a little bit different. I bring them in, we're in like kind of a living room setting. We sit down, we have a talk with each other. I am just trying to understand who they are, what they want out of life, what their goals are, what their aims are. And I don't necessarily care if that is financial, like I am interested in like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, how did you get where you're at? And do you love doing it? Or do you want to do something different? I think that through my podcast, I've just come to understand that the idea of success in life as women specifically, like we typically have more caretaking duties than men have. We typically have breaks in our cycle of earning, and we have different problems and different concerns than they do. And so kind of, I call it, I don't know, a chit chat, like sit down for a 30-minute chit chat. Let's just find out where you're at, what you're up to, what you're doing. And that idea of listening and hearing, it helps that I'm constantly curious. Like if you tell me something, I want to delve deep into that. I want to be like, oh, and how did you get there? And I'm a problem solver too. So a lot of times I'm listening to be like, oh, I know someone who does that, or I can help you out with that. Or that sort of thing. So I think that part of listening is being curious, and the other part is being caring about what they care about, not what I'm here to pound into them, or the idea.
Or even selling. Like you're not in the process of selling, you're in the process of solutioning. And I think a huge part of that is building trust. And so you talked a little bit about reflecting, especially as you're speaking with women, on the unique scenarios that women might be coming to you with: divorce, career break, inheritance, becoming a widow. How do you build trust in those scenarios, especially if they've got so much going on, they're so overwhelmed, and you just want them to sit down and start talking so that you can start building that trust and open communication with them?
I think that the way that I build trust is just listening. If they are, again, I'm not sure that I care about them if they're having a divorce or a situation in their life that's just overwhelming, that's taking up all their time and energy, and I'm trying to get them to talk about their finances. Like, that's not the right approach for it, right? Like, I just sit and listen and say, okay, tell me all the things that are hard for you right now. Like, just talk to me about what you're going through. Building that trust, I think, really gets to knowing who the whole person is, not just their finance. I think that if you focus on only like the return on investment or what they should be invested in or something like that, you don't get to understand that, hey, they're having a battle right now over custody, or they are dealing with the death of a loved one. And I think that approaching it like, okay, yeah, but we're here to talk about finance, so let's not talk about any of those other things. Let's just sit right here and talk about, how we can invest your money for you better. That doesn't work. And that's not the right thing to do anyway. That's not a good person.
I hear you. And I'm curious for two things. So number one is, as you're listening and getting this deep insight into all of these things that might happen in their life holistically, how does that manifest itself back in the way that you are helping them manage their financial decisions? So where do you kind of actively listen, and then that kind of goes into your database and you bring it back and say, hey, remember when you said this? I can help you with that thing that might not have been related to your assets and your transactions and your policies.
That is a really good question. And I actually do put it in a database. Like I have a database for things they're interested in and problems that they might have and goals and values. We kind of go through that values exercise.
So we were talking about building trust and really where you gather information and then surface it back in conversations with your clients that help you build out this level of communication with them. And you talked about how you capture that information. So can you just share a little bit again on where you're gathering this information so that you can surface it back in a way that helps them recognize, no, I was listening to you back then, and this is a part of how we're helping you get to a better situation with your money?
It's one of the most important things to me as an advisor and as a person, is trying to both actively listen and show that I have value, like that I'm helping them to grow. So I actually put the information in a database. I have a database, and it's not your typical, like, what's your name? What's your social security number? It's more along like, what do they like? What are their favorites? And I collect that information a little bit up front. Like very early in our relationship, I'm sending out hey, this is a little bit about me. Tell me a little bit about you. And then I look at that information because it's really interesting, both like just to personally connect. I connect with people like a book, I'll hear a book that they're saying, oh, I was interested in. I had one client tell me they were studying Islam, I think it was, and I'd have to look at my database to find out exactly what it was. But then I was listening to a podcast and they said this was a great book about Islam. And I'm like, oh, so-and-so was doing that. And I just sent him out the book. I'm like, I know this was something you were interested in. Here's a book. But I try and do that as well for like finance, my whole world revolves around finance. And so I'm thinking in the shower, this is so bad, but I'm thinking in the shower, well, so-and-so was having a hard time with college. I'm wondering like what sort of resources available for like college scholarships or for that sort of thing. And then we also, when they tell me what their goals and their values are, I like to align those with how they're spending their money. If I have someone who tells me that family, which I do quite frequently, tell me that family is their most important value, but then they've got a job that requires 70, 80 hours a week, I am like, let's look at maybe aligning these values more closely. Because if your family is your most important thing, but you're spending all of your time at work, there doesn't seem to be an alignment there. So let's talk about, or if family is your most important thing, but you don't have time to vacation with your family, as far as your finances go, you're like not putting your money where your values are. And with those incongruencies, I really try hard to align my financial advice with what they're telling me is important to them.
What if financial planning wasn't just about numbers, but about you, your values, your goals, your vision for the future? Nomi is transforming client discovery for wealth managers, going beyond assets and risk scores to uncover what truly matters. With behavioral insights and real-time data, Nomi helps advisors personalize advice, build deeper connections, and grow their businesses. Because the best financial decisions start with knowing you. Discover the future of client engagement at nomi.com. That makes sense. And you want them to feel like they're living with much more integrity and authenticity because, hey, you've told me this is what you care about. I'm going to help you actually put your behaviors behind these things that you said were so important to you. I love that. So you referenced before that you kind of also have talked with, in building relationships with women, you tell your own story about your career break and how you've got 5 children. And so you have a ton of experience at parenting, and you have this opportunity to really think about, how did I communicate and build trust to get them to do the behaviors I want them to do as children? And how do I apply some of those learnings to the people that are asking me for help in their own behavior change journeys? Can you talk a little bit about that overlap or analogy and how you look at those two?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. You said something, how do you get them to change their behaviors? Like, I don't. I had good luck with that. That's teenager years. I was along for the ride. But I would say that the best way, like as my children have grown and they're all grown now, every one of them is out of school and like making their own way in their own career and their own life choices. And the things that I've seen them do and accomplish have all come from the fact that I took the time to listen and model while they were younger. So like I did take some time off at the beginning of my career. As I was having the kids, I didn't go back to work again until my youngest was in like first grade. So typically when moms go back to work, quite frankly, Marla, I couldn't afford the daycare. 5 kids in daycare.
Yeah, I hear that.
It was not even going to work. But I went back when my daughter was a little older. And so my point was always like, I am going to be physically present in their life. And so financial services is actually something that you can be a little bit flexible with. You can work at home a little bit. And I did quite often work at home with my door open, and my kids always knew that if they came in and sat down, we could talk. They could tell me what their problems were. I was physically present in their life. I was always available for those sorts of conversations. And then I did a lot of modeling, like the behaviors, listening to what their needs and wants are. A lot of times you say, how did you change? I actually didn't change them. They told me what they were going for. And I changed the way that I was trying to help them to get what they wanted and what they needed rather than what I wanted and what I needed for them. So it actually typically is the kind of the way I do financial advising. I am not here to tell you what to do with your finances. I am here to listen to what you want to do and help you get where you want to go. Right?
Yeah, fantastic. So you launched the Fearless Financial Advisors, the Fearless Financial Female, the podcast.
Females, yeah.
Yes. and really to transform how we talk about money, how women think about money. A lot of financial advisors think about launching podcasts to help them as they're establishing and growing their business. What inspired you to start it? And what have you learned about storytelling and engagement and the medium of a podcast to help you get there?
So I will say I'm an accidental podcaster. I'm a reluctant podcaster. Like, I am an introvert through and through. The idea of getting on a podcast and doing it weekly and finding people to come on the podcast and tell their story terrifies me, scares the heck out of me. I am that person when you go to a party, I am the person sitting in the corner and I'm like, I've got 15 minutes to be here and I have to make one friend. So I think that I didn't decide to do it. This is what happened. I am so passionate about empowering young women to find their place professionally, to help them. You know, we all have things that we deal with as women in professional services. We all have situations where we're trying to raise kids and, you know, go to work and show up at work at a 10 and show up at our house at a 10. We have mommy guilt where we're like, oh my gosh, I talked to one woman she's like, I moved into a new town. I had no babysitter. I had something I needed to present on the next day. She's like, I called a babysitter at midnight, a babysitting service, and she was terrified the entire time she was giving her presentation. You know, so there are all these things that we deal with. You have caretaker responsibilities if you're dealing with pets or with a mom or just running your household. Like, a lot of times women have unique challenges. And I am so passionate about helping younger women to maybe see where they might run into some of these challenges in professional services and how we've dealt with it. How those of us who are successful have kind of gone through those different ideas and challenges and they've come out successful on the other side. And I will tell you that, Marla, I go to the women, and it's not just financial services. I've interviewed pilots and I've interviewed doctors and I've interviewed, you know, like just any professional woman who is successful. And I'll go to them and I'll say, hey, I'd love to hear your story on my podcast. And they're like, oh, I have not done anything cool. You don't want to hear my story. I am not doing anything cool. And I am like, well, let's delve into that. Let's just tell me your story and then we'll decide. It turns out, you know, she's put a rocket on the moon or she's a pilot.
That's not cool at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I think you've done something cool. So the other thing is that I will interview anybody, but I really like women who we can see ourselves being them. You know, we can see ourselves doing those jobs. We can hear ourselves making those mistakes and be like, oh, she did this. I can do it differently. And the tips that these women pass on are just one of my very first ones who said, stop apologizing in your emails. Stop saying you're sorry. Don't start your emails with, I'm so sorry. Say, I appreciate your patience. It was something I never would have thought of, but something that really has made a difference in my career. So thank you for asking about it. You can tell I'm passionate. I just love interviewing. I don't think that because I didn't do it to build a client base, I did it because it was a passion. I have accidentally got clients.
Yeah, nice.
But that wasn't the primary reason and still isn't actually the primary reason that I do it. But it does give me a much wider network so maybe I'm not so much in the corner at parties or not so scared of talking to people because I do love it so much.
We're very positive and optimistic. You were an early believer when I shared with you what Know Me is all about and how we are helping the wealth management industry and potentially even other financial services to really improve the way that they're doing client discovery, helping the clients really go through their own self-discovery in a very behavioral finance-backed manner. I wonder if you don't mind sharing one or two things about like what was interesting to you about that.
Working as a financial advisor, a lot of times I don't see the deep due diligence on who the person is. They just don't. Advisors, we are really, really good at coming up with a return on investment and an investment mix. And we talk numbers a lot and spreadsheets. And I don't think we really delve into the person. And we're good at trusting relationships and stuff like that, but we don't know who the person is and why they need a financial advisor. What are their goals? What are their values? What do they believe in? And I just don't think you can give really good financial advice unless you know some of those things. And I don't think your financial advice is going to be followed unless you kind of delve into that piece. And so I think that my thought when I saw the Know Me system is just like, this is so smart. That was my thought. I thought that is the piece that we're missing. That's the piece that we need to know in order to help our clients get where they need to go. Because again, like with my parenting style, I'm not trying to change their mind. I'm trying to meet them where they're at and figure out how I can help them achieve their goals.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And last question always on our podcast is, what's one instance in your personal life or a conversation that you had that totally changed your own relationship with money?
So I'm not sure I can point to one instance exactly, but what I can tell you is that growing up, I was always kind of under the impression that money was a boy, that girls aren't good at math and girls aren't good at finance, and my dad always took care of the finances, and it was just like he's in charge of that. That's his thing, you know? And so when I started in financial services 15 years ago, I started as a secretary, and everyone around me that was female was a secretary. They were the ones who were doing the admin, the paraplanner, they were the ones that were supporting these advisors who were all men. And the aha moment, or the thing that changed my relationship, was when I started seeing women take charge of their financial future. I started seeing women come in as clients and their husband didn't do the finances. They did, right? Mm-hmm. I started seeing women as financial advisors telling the rest of us, hey, you know what? This is a good field and you can do it. And I started seeing more women faces and more women voices at this arena. And that changed my relationship. Guess what, girls? We can do it.
I love it. And you've put so much more of your energy behind that. It's clear why modeling and inspiring fearlessness is so core to you and to your practice. Lorie, this conversation has been a really powerful reminder about the importance of deep listening, the analogy to great parenting, and it's about not having all the answers and, frankly, facing fears in order to find that security, in order to find what you're looking for in the financial decisions that are going to help you live a better life. And I think the best advisors out there, they don't just talk. In fact, they do much less talking than what we think. They create space. And that's what I'm hearing that you do in your practice. They create space for their clients to share those fears, hopes, ambitions. And just like parenting, it's not like controlling the outcome. They might not embrace those behaviors, but you're guiding them with care and patience and really deep understanding. So to our listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, take a step back and ask yourself, are you listening to your clients, your colleagues, your own financial needs? Are the best insights come when you stop filling the silence and you start hearing what's actually being said by the client who's looking to you for your support. Lorie, where can our listeners find your podcast and more about your work?
Perfect. They can go to fearlessfinancialadvisors.com, and that'll have my podcast on it as well, The Fearless Females, or you can just search up in any of the like Spotify, Apple, Fearless Females by Lorie, Lorie Jones, and you can get in touch with me both of those places.
And for our listeners, what's one way that listening has changed your own approach to money? Drop it in the comments or DM me. Until next time, thank you for joining us on the Knowing Me, Knowing You podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformative conversations to you. Until next time, keep discovering, keep growing, and remember, you're in control of your own financial story. Follow us for more conversations on financial confidence, self-discovery, and the future of money.